Hello everyone, my name is Rajesh Panta and I'm an acting CTO of Rajesh Technology Solutions. Today I'm going to present about the final project and results of security audit recently completed on Rajesh Technology Solutions. The presentation will also include the network risk analysis and threat recommendations to mitigate those particular risks. This is the general overview and all of these topics will be discussed as we move along the presentation. Rajesh Technology Solutions currently provide three major services to its clients. First of all, it provides service as a reseller for installation, full-phase maintenance, and support of various multi-vendor network devices such as routers, switches, and firewalls. It also provides infrastructure auditing service to various organizations so that they have the idea of the present technology level being utilized in their company. Nonetheless, Rajesh Technology Solutions also support their clients to evaluate the network infrastructure to meet their goals and challenges. Now we are looking at the organization structure and the department classification inside Rajesh Technology Solutions. There are three key members inside the organizations and they are CEO, CTO and the Deputy General Manager. There are also 5 distinct departments inside the company. The departments are technical services, research and development, sales and business development, human resource and administration, and the finance department. The CTO handles technical services and research and development department, whereas the Deputy General Manager handles sales and business development, human resource, and the finance department. As of now, Rajesh Technology Solutions is providing its services to 3 distinct customers, and all of these customers are from various service domains. The customers are Century Bank Limited, Overlink Communications Limited, and Cantech Incorporation. This is the overall network design of the company. As you can see that the 3 different customers are located in 3 distinct locations inside Canada. We, Rajesh Technology Solutions, are currently located at Manitoba, and we have been providing our services from this particular location. The ISPs we are taking services currently are Bale and Shaw. This is the breakdown of the network design. As we can see that there are various departments inside the company, and there is also a server farm that is being located. All of these are being simulated in Packet Tracer itself, and yeah, all of these departments are interconnected with each other, and finally with the server farm, so that the data flow is even and the end-to-end connectivity is ensured. Inside the server farm, there are various routers. There's routers and multi-layer switches, and yeah, it is also connected with the other servers inside the core server farm as well. It would help us to maintain end-to-end connectivity and provide seamless services to our clients. This is the IP planning we have utilized in the company. There are various pools of private and public IP addresses. And as we can see, there are 9 different VLANs that are being used for separate departments and servers. All of these are to improve security performance and provide easier management. And this will also ensure the network flexibility inside the company. The public IP addresses are being used from the Bale and Shaw ISPs as explained earlier. These are some of the critical applications used inside the company to run those critical business operations of Rajesh Technology Solutions. One of those is the Metric Stream Audit Management Software, as one of our primary services is providing the audit services to the various clients. So yeah, it is one of the prominent service and applications that is being utilized currently. There are other applications as well, which are the Bamboo HR software, which is basically a human resource management software. Office 365, Windows Server 2019 data center that is being used in the servers, and we have used ISET Endpoint Protection Standard as an antivirus to secure our data and services. It also enhances our internet security as well. Now we are looking at the asset inventory and valuation of various assets that are being identified inside Rajesh Technology Solutions. As you can see that there are various physical assets, software assets, information facility and people assets as well. All of these assets are being classified on the basis of the type and the asset value. And moving forward, we'll further limit these assets, and yeah, we'll only focus on those critical assets that would be considered for risk analysis purposes. Yeah, these are the 18 most critical assets that were identified, and yeah, they are classified on the basis of the type, asset custodian, asset owner, their location, and asset value. Those 18 assets are further breakdown on the 8 assets, and yeah, these assets would be used for all the risk assessment and analysis purposes as well. Here we can see that we have only focused on 8 assets, and yeah, depending on the type of assets, which can be information, software, facilities, equipment, and people. And yeah, these are also based on the CIA TRAD and their impact, which can be high, very high, or low. We can also see various threats and threat descriptions pertaining to these particular assets, their likelihood of occurrence, and the threat exposure as well. This is one of the most important portion of my presentation, and it discusses about the risk assignment determination of those assets identified. Depending on their threat and their likelihood of occurrence, we have decided to either mitigate, transfer, or accept those risks for those particular assets. So for physical asset inventory list with the threat of unauthorized change of records, we have decided to mitigate the risk. We have also decided to mitigate the risk for the threat of misuse of audit tools for metric stream audit management software. For Bamboo Azure software with threat of unauthorized use of software, we have decided to mitigate this risk as well. The Think System Tower servers, which is the facility assets inside our company, and with the threat of fire, we've decided to transfer this risk. For integrated service routers, with the threat of access to the network by unauthorized persons, we have planned to mitigate this particular risk of the assets. And regarding the equipment assets that is being used, which is the Dell Inspiron desktop computers, and with the threat of malfunction of equipment, we have decided to mitigate this risk as well. Last but not the least, these are the two remaining people assets inside the Rajesh Technology Solutions. And for Deputy General Manager with the threat of breach of contractual relations, we have decided to transfer the risk. And for the Chief Technical Officer with the threat of industrial espionage, we have decided to accept the risk. These are the vulnerabilities analysis of all those assets identified previously, and here we can see the vulnerability description, their severity, and the existing safeguard that is currently being used in the organization itself. There are also some existing safeguard rating, and which can be either high, medium, none, or low, depending on the type of vulnerabilities related to these particular assets. And we have already discussed about the risk assignment determination of whether to mitigate, transfer, or accept these risks being identified. We have also used the Microsoft Threat Modeling software tool to analyze the assets to analyze the threat pertaining to the software assets inside the organization, and we discussed about the various threats of the software assets being identified, and those were classified on the basis of strike model, as we can see over here as well. The threats would be explained on the further slides, and we have also provided some of the recommendations to mitigate those threats. Now we are looking at the risk assessment of all of those assets identified. At first, there are some information and software assets being identified. There are the exposure factor, the annual rate of occurrence, and other calculations as well to those particular assets. Exposure factor is basically the subjective potential percentage of loss to a specific asset if a threat is being realized. So as we can see that for physical asset inventory list, the exposure factor is 40% and the annual rate of occurrence is 2 times. And there are also other calculations regarding the cost impact of those assets. For audit management software and Bamboo Azure software, they have exposure factor of 65% and 50% respectively. Moving towards the facility and physical assets, the tower servers have an exposure factor of 80% for the threat of fire. The service routers have exposure factor of 85% for the threat of being assessed by the unauthorized persons inside or outside the company. For the Dell Inspiron desktop computers, the exposure factor is 70% for the threat of malfunction of equipment. And the cost impact calculations are being shown as well, with an annual loss expectancy of $54,740 for this particular asset being identified. For the people assets, for the Deputy General Manager with the threat of breach of contractual relations, the annual rate of occurrence is 2 times and the exposure factor is 75%. For Chief Technical Officer with the threat of industrial espionage, the annual rate of occurrence would be 2 as well, and the exposure factor being 80%, and the annual loss expectancy is $33,600. Now we'll focus on the countermeasure selection and recommendations of all those threats being identified. At first, talking about the physical asset inventory list and the threat of being unauthorized change of records, we have decided to mitigate this risk. The control family and control type are mentioned as well, the control family being technical, administrative, and administrative. For the recommendations to mitigate this particular threat, we have recommended to utilize an active discovery tool to identify devices connected to the organization network and update the hardware asset inventory as well. Tools like Nmap can be utilized for this purpose. And we can also deploy semi-annual inventory audits and compare it with other internal inventory audits as well. To deploy these recommendations, the countermeasure cost will be $5,700 with the residual risk rating being very low. The next asset is metric stream audit management software, and the threat identified is the misuse of audit tools. The control family and control type can be seen in the table itself. We have decided to mitigate the risk, and yeah, for to mitigate the risk of misuse of audit tools for this particular software, we have recommended to strengthen the physical security of the concerned departments consisting of the devices where the softwares are primarily installed. And yeah, also deploying a software access management tool will definitely create an additional level of security by providing snapshot in real time of which employees are accessing the software. Yeah, and all of this will be deployed in the internal server and the departments on where the softwares are being utilized and primarily installed. The countermeasure cost to deploy these recommendations would be $2,800, and the residual risk rating would be very low. The next asset is Bamboo HR software, and the threat identified is the unauthorized use of software. The control family is technical, administrative, and technical. We have decided to mitigate this risk for this particular asset. And yeah, the recommendations that we have concluded is to prevent the cross-site scripting, we need to deploy a content security policy. It is basically an HTTP response header that will help us to declare dynamic resources that can be loaded depending on the source of the request as well. And yeah, introducing role-based access controls during the implementation process would definitely help us mitigate internal data security risks. And this need to be used in the external and internal software servers inside the server farm. The countermeasure cost to deploy this recommendation would be $5,800, and the residual risk rating would be low. The next asset is Cisco integrated service routers, and the threat is access to network by unauthorized person. We have decided to mitigate this risk as well. Yeah, for the threats being identified, we have recommended to add biometric authentication system to restrict and monitor the individuals to the server farm to protect the routers from unauthorized access. We can also deploy some IPS and IDS prevention mechanisms on these routers that are being currently utilized in the company. So yeah, this would definitely help us to protect the access from the unauthorized persons. And yeah, the countermeasure cost to deploy this recommendation would be $7,500 in total, with the residual risk rating being low. The next asset is Dell Spire and desktop computers, which is the physical assets of our organization, the threat being malfunction of equipment. To mitigate this threat, we have recommended to use desktop UPS on all desktop computers inside the company. This would definitely reduce the possibilities of OS crashes and hard drive failures as well. We can also encrypt the hard drive regularly and provide some basic trainings, the regular trainings for office staff regarding the IT guidelines and bringing security awareness as well. The countermeasure cost will be $10,000, and the residual risk rating would be medium after deploying these recommendations. The next one is the ThinkSystem Tower servers, which is the facility assets of our organization. The threat being identified is fire, and to recommend it, we have decided to transfer this risk, and the recommendations is to provide annual maintenance contracts to outside vendors who would help us on implementing the highly efficient power and cooling designs to protect the servers inside our server farm. Yeah, we can also implement 24/7 environmental monitoring systems to alert when the temperature is up or temperature rises inside the server farm. To deploy these recommendations, the countermeasure cost will be $1,000, and the residual risk rating would be low. The next asset is a deputy general manager, and with the threat of breach of contractual relations, we have decided to transfer this risk. The control family being identified is administrative, and the technical. And the recommendation is to involve the board of directors to decide on company contracts, eliminating the sole control of DGM on decision-making process. We can also define various security labels, and there should be enough information on the SLA as well to ensure that the third parties will follow our guidelines and required levels of confidentiality, integrity, and availability whenever handling the corporate contracts. The countermeasure cost to be $5,600, and the residual risk rating is low after deploying this recommendation. Last but not the least, the asset is the chief technical officer, and the threat being identified is industrial espionage. We have decided to accept the risk, and the recommendation that we have came is to identify the company's threat secrets, and by accurately analyzing intellectual property of the company, we'd be better to set goals and assign security resources to better protect the most critical secrets. We should always have a backup plan if the person on the role compromise critical infrastructure in order to safeguard in place to ensure the integrity of the systems. To deploy all of these recommendations, the countermeasure cost estimated is $8,500, and after all these recommendations being implemented, the residual risk rating would be medium. Thank you so much.